Solo comes from the Latin verb solvere, to loosen, free, release, and the root therefore may take the form solve as well. So to solve a problem means to find its solution, as if you were freeing up a logjam. And a solvent is a chemical that dissolves or loosens up oil or paint. Soluble, 1. Able to be dissolved in a liquid, especially water. 2. Able to be solved or explained. To an optimistic young principal, the problems of a school like this one might seem challenging but soluble. Soluble looks like a word that should be confined to chemistry labs, though it's often used by non-chemists as well to describe substances that can be dissolved in liquids. On the other hand, the sense of soluble meaning solvable is also quite common. In this sense, soluble, like its opposite, insoluble, is usually paired with problem. If only all life's problems were soluble by stirring them in a container filled with water. Absolution, the act of forgiving someone for their sins. Every week she would kneel to confess her little sins and receive absolution from the priest. Since the Latin absolutus meant set free, it's easy to see how absolution came to mean set free from sin. And also easy to see why absolute means basically pure, that is, originally, free of sin. The verb for absolution is absolve. Just as a priest absolves believers of their sins, you may absolve your brother of blame for a household disaster, or you yourself may in time be absolved for that scrape on the car backing out of a parking space. Dissolution, the act or process of breaking down or apart into basic components, as through disruption or decay. The dissolution of the USSR was probably the most momentous event of the last quarter of the 20th century. Dissolution is the noun form of dissolve, but it's a much less common word. Still, we refer to the fact that the dissolution of American marriages became far more common in the later 20th century. Or that when India won its independence in 1948, the dissolution of the once global British Empire was all but complete. Or that factors such as crime and drugs might be contributing to the dissolution of contemporary society's moral fabric. A dissolute person is someone in whom all restraint has dissolved, and who now indulges in behavior that shocks decent people. Resolute, marked by firm determination. After 10 years of indecision, the Senate finally seems resolute about reaching an agreement. Resolute comes from the same Latin verb as resolved, and the two words are often synonyms. So how did it get this meaning from the Latin? Essentially, when you resolve a question or problem, you come to a conclusion, and once you've reached a conclusion, you can proceed to act. So in your New Year's resolutions, you resolve, or make up your mind, to do something. Unfortunately, New Year's resolutions aren't a good illustration of the meaning of resolute, since only about 1 in 10 actually seems to succeed. Hydr flows from the Greek word for water. The water root can be found in the lovely flower called the hydrangea. Its seed capsules resemble ancient Greek water vessels. Hydraulic, 1. Relating to water, operated, moved, or brought about by means of water. 2. Operated by the resistance or pressure of liquid forced through a small opening or tube. Without any hydraulic engineers, the country is unlikely to build many dams or reservoirs on its own. By means of a hydraulic lift, the driver can lift the bed of a dump truck with the touch of a button. He might also repair the hydraulic steering, the hydraulic brake, or the hydraulic clutch, all of which, like the lift that holds everything up, take advantage of the way liquids act under pressure. Somewhat like a pulley or a lever, a hydraulic system magnifies the effect of moderate pressure exerted over a longer distance into powerful energy for a shorter distance. Dehydrate, 1. To remove water from. 2. To deprive of energy and zest. The boy appeared at dusk staggering out of the desert, dangerously sunburned and dehydrated. Dehydrating food is a good way to preserve it. Raisins, which are dehydrated grapes, are a good example. Dehydration through industrial processes makes it possible to keep food even longer and store it in a smaller space. Freeze-drying produces food that only needs rehydration, that is, the addition of water, to restore its original consistency. Runners, cyclists, and hikers fearful of dehydration seem to be constantly hydrating themselves nowadays, sometimes even using a shoulder pack with a tube going straight into the mouth. Dehydrate can also be used for making something dry or lifeless, thus, a dull teacher can dehydrate American history, and an unimaginative staging can dehydrate a great Shakespeare play. Hydroelectric, having to do with the production of electricity by water power. A massive African hydroelectric project is creating the world's largest man-made lake, and is said to hold the key to the future for the country. The prime component of most hydroelectric systems is a dam. A high dam funnels water downward at high pressure to spin turbines, which in turn drive generators to produce high-voltage electricity. Mountainous countries with rushing rivers can produce the most hydroelectricity. Though hydroelectricity comes from a clean and completely renewable energy source, dams disrupt natural systems in a way that disturbs environmentalists. Hydroponics, the growing of plants in nutrient solutions, with or without supporting substances such as sand or gravel. He had never thought hydroponics produced vegetables as tasty as those grown in soil, and the tomatoes seemed particularly disappointing. Hydroponics, also known as aquaculture or tank farming, began as a way of studying scientifically the mechanisms of plant nutrition. Hydroponically grown plants may have no solid material under them at all. Instead, their roots often simply hang in water with a rich mix of nutrients dissolved in it. The principal advantage to hydroponics is the savings from reduced labor costs, since it's generally carried on in enclosed areas and the irrigation and fertilizing are done mechanically. Peppers, cucumbers, and various other vegetables are produced hydroponically in huge quantities.